Hi, my name is Blade, and today I'll be giving you 8 queer film recommendations. Well, happy Pride Month, y'all. Now, this is technically a part 2, because I did do a queer film recommendation video last year. So technically this is part 2, and if you watch some of these already, you can always go watch the other one for even more film recommendations. But I don't know, I just thought this would be something nice to like make an annual thing and return to in June. But also, I don't think I need to point out, especially if you're an American, why this type of thing is important. And if you don't think so, this is not the channel for you and you can fucking leave. I don't care. So, what are my qualifications, you might be wondering, to give you film recommendations, let alone queer ones? Well, first of all, I'm pretty much at this point a certified cinephile. Um, anyway, I like movies. I'm also a small independent filmmaker, so I also know a thing or two about movies. And also, if you couldn't tell by my shirt, general demeanor and attitude on the topic, I am in fact a dude who likes dudes, so I think enough said.
Hi, gay.
Before I get into the 8 movies I have laid out for you today, I'm actually going to recommend some upcoming ones that are actually coming out in this month of June, and one that's a little bit more ahead of time, but ones that are coming out this month because I think we should be supporting them. But also, with everything going on, I think it's important to support them. And then also, just a little anecdote of something I experienced recently that really reinforced me wanting to make this video is I was at the opening day of Backrooms, and there so happened to be 2 trailers that played back to back. They were both queer movies, and there was maybe 3 rows behind me, this group of 3 guys who were just saying the most asinine comments about the trailers and complaining about the trailers and be like, why is this important? So I think it's really important to support these movies. So first of which is Girls Like Girls. Now, if that title sounds familiar, it is a adaptation, I suppose you could say. It's directed by Haley Kiyoko, who has a song titled Girls Like Girls. It's been made into a full movie, so I think you should definitely check that out. But if you're a little horror diva like me, there's also Leviticus coming out. This is a horror queer movie. It follows 2 guys. I'm not 100% sure if it's like a conversion therapy camp situation, but there is obviously with that title a religious aspect. There's some demon things going on. It looks very interesting, so I recommend you watch that when it comes out. And then last but not least is a bit further out in August, but there is Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. I'm not 100% sure what the queer element is, but it is directed by Jane Schunburn, who made I Saw the TV Glow, which is a great also queer media film. Be on the lookout for those. I think Girls Like Girls is June 12th, Leviticus is June 19th, and Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma, I believe, is August 8th. That should show you how much of a movie fan I am. I did not write those dates down. Those are purely in here. Alright, let's stop dilly-dallying. Let's get into the actual recommendations I have for you. Now, like I said, this is a part 2, so there might be some movies you think are missing. They may be in part 1, or also there's just some that I think are so popular that I don't really know if I need to recommend them. But if you haven't checked them out, go check them out. We have Brokeback Mountain, we have Love, Simon, and those movies, Call Me By Your Name, whatever. I think those ones, Moonlight, I think those ones have more attention already. But hey, if you haven't watched them, go watch them. Alright, first and foremost, we have Dead Poets Society. Now, this is a classic movie, but just in case you are unfamiliar, the plot summary is a new English teacher, John Keating, is introduced to an all-boys preparatory school that is known for its ancient traditions and high standards. He uses unorthodox methods to reach out to his students who face enormous pressures from their parents and the school. Now, you might be wondering if you've seen this movie, why it's here, because it's not necessarily an overtly obvious queer film or even involving direct queer storylines. But similar to my last installment of this, I do think it's important to include movies that have queer undertones, because it is important to the history of like, before we were out here making obviously like overtly queer movies, these themes were being injected in to movies. And I feel like at this point in time, Dead Poet Society is pretty much accepted as, if not like purposefully having queer undertones, there definitely been added by the community. But I think at this much, it's pretty much accepted that it very much like purposefully does have queer undertones. Now, I don't really think I have to say much about this movie. It is a classic. It stars Robin Williams, also has a young Ethan Hawke early in his career. I don't want to spoil too much just in case you haven't seen it, but the general idea is, as the description says, there's this teacher that comes into this preparatory school and he's very unorthodox. But the queer element to me is there is a character, my god, why am I forgetting his name? Oh, right, there's a character, slipped my mind, but Neil Perry, who, without saying too much, you know, he has other ambitions in his life, and his father has different ideas for him. So like already I think you can kind of see the queer picture, but in the movie it's relating a bit more to, he's more on the artistic side, and his father wants him to be more, you know, like in a grounded reality, and he struggles with that. And I also would say that him and Todd, who's played by Ethan Hawke, have a relationship that kind of teeters on like there might be something more there than just like a platonic liking for one another. So I absolutely recommend this film. Obviously it's in the videos recommendations, but even besides the queer element, it's just a classic. I think it has some really moving elements to it. I also think right now it might be important too, because there's very much a media literacy crisis that, as Backrooms and Obsession have both pointed out, I feel like every video at this point I keep on mentioning Backrooms and Obsession, but like media literacy does not just apply to literature. I think it's also in people's analyzing and the way they consume films. But my point is, there's a big emphasis on literature and poetry in this movie that I think also is very important. So definitely recommend.
I'm gonna act. Ah! Yes! Yes! I'm gonna be an actor. Ever since I can remember, I wanted to try this. I even tried to go to summer stock auditions last year, but of course my father wouldn't let me. For the first time in my whole life, I know what I want to do.
Also, before I move on to the next movie, whichever one of you bitches out there thought it was funny when Olivia Rodrigo dropped her song The Cure, and you thought, you know, I'm gonna make an edit of this song to this movie, thank you for your service, but also, why are you causing me emotional damage? I don't appreciate that.
My head is full of poison and my heart is full of doubt. I got toxins in my bloodstream. You tried hard to suck them out.
Next up, we have God's Own Country, which is about, in Yorkshire, a young unhappy farmer is living with his grandmother and sickly father. He numbs his frustrations with drinking and casual sex until a Romanian migrant worker sets him on a new path. Now, this is a movie that stars Josh O'Connor, because, you know, famously Josh O'Connor's in every movie ever, seemingly, lately. But this is one that is, I think, important in its depiction of, you know, like struggling with inner turmoil, or to use the lingo of the community, being on the DL, if you will. But I don't think this, like, what happens in this movie is necessarily brand new. There's definitely other movies that portray, you know, like being closeted and that type of thing. But what I think it makes this different is it updates it. It presents it in a more modern way, you know. And I also think it shows both the toxicity that you are putting on yourself and others when you live that like lifestyle of, like, you know, like only exploring your queer identity in kind of DL encounters and really like being like secret about it, and how that could be both toxic for yourself and others, but also how to navigate like embracing it in a healthy way, and like also, you know, what it does to the other people that you are doing things with, you know. So I think it's really important in that way. It has really great acting. I think it's in that realm of like more subtle acting, lots of emotion in the face, you know, like which is not to say this movie doesn't have dialogue, but I think it's really powerful in the unspoken. And I also think, without spoiling too much of the movie, it really shows both ends of the spectrum of like the struggle of not being okay with yourself and doing things like in private and like that type of inner turmoil, but also the beauty of like finding love and like how much what's the word I'm looking for? I guess the weight that you carry and what effect that takes on you and what alleviation it'll give you once you kind of let go of that. Sorry if I'm all over the place. I kind of like to do these a little bit more free form than like bullet points or like making a script, because that's just the way I like my videos to be. But anyways, this is a great movie. If you like Josh O'Connor, definitely check it out. I keep on wanting to say definitely recommend, but this is a recommendation video, so that feels stupid. But definitely recommend.
I think we should stay in the caravan.
We can stay here.
Inspired by Winston Churchill. It's called the Winston Throw, and it's inspired by the battle he had to pull us through.
See you in the caravan.
War effort. It's about.
Next up, we have from just last year in 2025, Honey Don't, which is about small-town private investigator Honey O'Donoghue probes a series of strange deaths that are tied to a mysterious church. Now, I'm just gonna be honest, this movie is not particularly my cup of tea nor my favorite, but my reasoning for including it is, I think for some people it does work, and I also think I try my best to include as much of a range as I can from queer stories. I don't want to just focus on like male on male relationships. You know, this is a WLW, woman loving woman situation, but you know, I also try to include like different gender identities and as much of a spectrum as I can. I'll be honest, in this video the spectrum isn't as wide as I wanted it to be, but I can only really talk about my frame of reference from what I've watched. And then also there was the video I did last year that had 10 movies, so now I have 18 movies I've talked about in total, so like I can only do so much. But anyways, my point is I wanted to include this for the woman-loving woman element, but also like there is something to be said about there is some stylish filmmaking here. I also don't totally hate the story, I just don't love where it goes, but I do like seeing this type of archetype, you know, like the drunk investigator, like whatever, like sleazing around, but from a female perspective, and then on top of that a queer perspective. This has Margaret Qualley, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Evans, and they all turn in great performances. It's not my favorite movie. It is by the same director, one of the Coen brothers, working separately. He also directed Drive Away Dolls, which I was not a big fan of either, which I'm not trying to talk down on these. I'm just saying I'm not going to lie and say that I personally love this movie, but I do love Margaret Qualley, and I do think this is a at least fun time, and it is a nice little piece of queer cinema if it's your thing.
But I am puzzled, miss. Ma'am. Miss?
Just don't call me late for dinner. Puzzled why?
All right, next up we have 2019's Matthias and Maxime, which is about two young men's lifelong friendship is tested when they act in a movie whose script calls for them to kiss each other. I really love this movie. I only watched it recently in April. That's how I discovered it. I just came across it and had to watch it, and this movie is amazing. Like, not even just for the queer storyline, like this just as a movie is amazing. Like, it, first of all, amazing direction and cinematography. There's some gorgeous shots, really cool, stylish auteur filmmaking. Writing is great, but I think the writing is my favorite element of this movie, and which is why for Pride Month I have chosen this movie to be my video essay subject, which I always put out a video essay at the end of the month, so expect that. But I really am going to lean into the writing of it in that video essay, because I think the writing is the really strong element here. There is so much that is said without being said, and there's also so much that is kept from the audience, but in a good way. It's very strong writing showcase, and this movie is just great. I think I fortunately don't really too heavily relate to this situation. I mean, of course, I've had like straight friends that I've liked or whatever in my life, but this I haven't related to this where there's two friends who've been friends for a long time. Maybe they're even in a friend group, and there's this tension between them that is, like romantic, but they haven't really confronted it or maybe even realized it yet, that it goes beyond the platonic. I think that's very relatable for a lot of people, and there's different obstacles as to maybe why they haven't confronted that yet. But I think it's even relatable to people in who might have a romantic interest in somebody in a straight way. I think this is not an uncommon thing, where two friends realize way later, like, oh my god, I think we might actually have romantic feelings for each other. But this is really great. I think yearning is very in right now, but this movie weirdly has so much yearning without having yearning at all. And I think once again, that's what makes it really strong and endearing, is there's just so much spoken in between words. Like nothing is said, but you understand it all. There's some really powerful scenes in here. I think I love the ending. I think the ending at first might be a little bit like, oh really? Like I didn't want it to end that way, but I think it's a strong ending. So honestly, dare I say, out of all the movies that I'm going to recommend to you today, this is the one I recommend the most. If you have Mubi, you can watch it through Mubi. It is French. You do have to read subtitles, but like, get over it. You bitches have subtitles on in movies that are in the language that is your first language for no reason. So like, just read the fucking subtitles. Get over it.
Est-ce que vous êtes déjà embrassé avant?
Eh boy, jamais fait la vaisselle, là, ce
OK. Sérieusement?
Ben non.
Alright, next up we have another movie you'll probably need subtitles for, which is Monster, which is about a single mother demands answers from a school teacher when her son begins acting strangely. Later on, a fight at school causes even more trouble. Now, this is a complicated one to include in this video, because by me recommending it in a queer recommendation video, it kind of does change your viewing of this movie a little bit, because the queer element is not obvious at first and it becomes obvious as the story goes on. But at the same time, this is such a great movie that I really want people to watch, so I still want to recommend. I'll just apologize in advance that you didn't get to have the reveal as intended, but I don't think it would really ruin the experience, because this is another one, just like the last movie, that is just amazing filmmaking. As I said, you'd probably need subtitles for it because this is a Japanese film, but it is so good. First of all, the score. This is something I nominated at my silly little award show that I do a couple years back for the score, because it's really good. But once again, the writing is just really, really strong. It starts off one way and then we slowly lead up to where it's going, and it's not a psychological thriller at all, but it's a drama, but it kind of operates the same way as a psychological thriller, where you're trying to figure out like what is going on, and there's little things you pick up on here and there, but you eventually arrive at the answer, and the payoff is great. This is a really good movie. I think the description pretty much puts it perfectly. Like, her son is just kind of acting strange. You don't really realize why until you do realize why. But I think my favorite element of this movie is genuinely how beautifully it showcases the queer experience of, like, when you're younger, realizing you kind of have romantic feelings for someone of the same sex, and then but when you're younger, when you're little, we don't really have a concept of any of that yet, so you don't realize why it might be wrong. There's an innocent quality to it, and I love how this movie showcases that, and it does not shy away from showing how beautiful and innocent that is. I love that it doesn't shy away from that. I love that it even like highlights and uplifts it. There's a gentle intimacy to this movie and the love that it showcases, and I really love that element of it. Obviously, it also includes, this is about school kids, so there is a bullying element as well. But I like that it doesn't linger on it too much. I like that it's part of the plot, but it's not a huge part of the plot. So I absolutely, it's becoming redundant, but I highly recommend this film.
これどうしたん？
豚の脳なんだよね。港の脳は豚の脳と入れ替わってんだよ。こういうところなんか変っていうかさ。
Alright, next up we have once again from last year, On Swift Horses, which is about Muriel and her husband Lee begin a new life together after he returns home from the Korean War. However, their newfound stability gets upended by the arrival of Lee's charismatic brother, a wayward gambler with a secret past. Now, unlike Honey Don't, this is one that I really like, that I think people generally have kind of lukewarm or even negative opinions of, but I just like it. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen, or even like a 10 out of 10 movie, but I actually really enjoy it. Number one, since it's a queer recommendations video, I have to say I like the broad realm of queer representation. There's both a male-on-male relationship and a woman-loving-woman relationship, and then even though they're not necessarily heavily featured, there is like queer speakeasies and stuff in it, so there is like a wide range kind of queer representation in the story. But I can see why this doesn't work for people. There is some writing choices that and maybe some things that people might consider surface level, which I do understand, but I don't know. I think that my inclusion of it in this video and my personal liking of it is kind of like the found family aspect of the movie. I won't say too much as to not like spoil it, but there is a very, like we make our own family, insert RuPaul here.
We as gay people, we get to choose our family. We get to choose the people that we're around. You know what I'm saying?
But like the community element of like, and how, I don't know, like sometimes the queer realization comes later in life, but that doesn't make it any less real or any less valid from other experiences. And like I said, I've already said too many times in this last 5 little like sentences here, but like the community aspect, I think there's a certain relationship in this movie that I think is a really interesting relationship and a nice bond between two people that I understand why people don't like the movie, because their relationship could have been written a little bit and explored and written a little bit better and a little bit more, but I still like it. I lost my whole train of thought, but what I think what I was going to say is there's some great actors in here. We have Will Poulter, Daisy Edgar Jones, Oscar nominee Jacob Elordi. That was cringy. Anyway, Oscar nominee Jacob Elordi in it. And it's a great movie. Once again, it's becoming redundant, but I personally recommend.
You know what I think? I think you see right through all of it.
All of what?
All the supposed to's. All the stuff they tell you matters. All the stuff the guys next to me in Korea cared so much about.
Alright, penultimately, again from last year, we have Plainclothes, which is about a police officer works undercover to lure and arrest men who display lewd behavior in public restrooms. However, he soon finds himself torn between duty and desire when he develops a secret connection with one of his targets. I just have to say, off rip, I was very taken back by this movie. It was one that I was like vaguely interested in, and then when I watched it I was like, bitch, why wasn't I high-key interested in? Because I'll get into the writing and the queer element of it in a second, but the editing and like the filmmaking, the style of filmmaking in this movie fucking goes off. Like, I was so taken by the way that this film is edited, the way it looks, the more stylish choices are really good. Also, I know you bitches are thirsty for Tom Blythe, so there's that for you as well. But as far as the content of the movie actually goes, first of all, I want to say it does feature law enforcement, but this is definitely not a movie that's like endorsing any of that at all. In fact, if anything, it points out the corruption of it all. But I think this is another one like similar kind of ish to God's Own Country that shows great representation of repression. And since he is a police officer too, it does introduce, and I'm not going to spoil somebody else's profession in this movie, but ooh, prepare to be gagged. But it showcases too how, maybe not nowadays because things are a little bit better, but back in the day, how you were literally forced and had to work in these environments that were very much against who you truly are on the inside, but for your livelihood and for the sake of your own safety and stuff, you kind of just had to roll with it. And I imagine it eats you up inside, you know? So I think it's a really great showcase of that. But above all else, the filmmaking here is fucking great. Like, I recommend this to you even just as like a cinema person. If you love filmmaking and movies, you should definitely check this out. All right, last but certainly not least, and once again, prepare to pull up those subtitles, but we have Summer of '85, which is about when 16-year-old Alexei Let's try that again. When 16-year-old Alexis capsizes off the coast of Normandy, 18-year-old David heroically saves him. Alexis just met the friend of his dreams who opens his eyes to a new horizon of friendship, art, and sexual bliss. This is a French movie, so once again, just read the fucking subtitles. It's not that hard. There's a whole world of foreign cinema out there waiting for you if you just read the subtitles. And speaking of that, the French specifically make great films, and this is one of them. Similar, like, I guess, to Monster, this is another one that focuses on a younger storyline. However, I will say, I think they're both teenagers, but I could be wrong, I think in France, though, both of these people are, like, of age. Now, that doesn't really matter to the story, but I'm just saying there's a bit of a difference in, like, Western culture from this movie. But, once again, this is just a great little hidden gem movie. I think it got kind of screwed over because it is a 2020 release. It did premiere at Cannes, but you know, we all know what happened in 2020. Well, yes. So I think it kind of flew under the radar a little bit, but this is a great movie. It is another great showcase of young, queer, innocent kind of love, but I think this introduces a great element. Oh, I guess it's also kind of similar to maybe it's like the middle point of Monster and Matthias and Maxime, because it kind of showcases the element of, you know, like the young, innocent love, but also I think this is a great example for, you know, like, just because we are queer people doesn't mean we don't go through the same types of things in our relationships, where this is a great showcase of, I think, like, maybe not necessarily avoid an attachment style, but two people who want two very different things out of the relationship. And what I really appreciate about that is oftentimes with queer storylines, it's so focused on the queer element and the challenges the queer connection might bring, where we don't as much so get things like this where the queer aspect of the relationship is not necessarily the drama of the movie or the focus point. This movie focuses a lot more on the dynamics of their relationship and exploring that. There is a tragic quality to this movie that I will let you experience for yourself. I will not spoil that. It is revealed within like the first 5 minutes of the movie, but I will still let you experience that for yourself. For you bitches who love to yearn, and for you bitches who are sad as hell all the time, this is definitely for you. Yeah, so I definitely recommend, if you're a sad little bitch, I definitely recommend this to you, but I recommend it to you in general.
Et tout ce que je savais, c'est que je n'étais pas rassasié de lui. Je voulais passer tout mon temps, chaque seconde de mon temps avec lui.
Alright, so those are the films I have to recommend for you this June, this Pride Month, in our ungodly year of 2026. If there's anything you think I missed, like I said, I have a video from last year that has not 8 but 10. Also, feel free to recommend more down below. I definitely have more on my watch list I need to get around to, but there might be some that you can introduce me to that I might not have seen or heard about myself yet. Before I go, I just want to say again, I think we really need to keep the conversation alive on not only fictional queer stories, but real life queer stories. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We are under attack. Whether you want to admit it or not, the threat of violence, death, eradication is very real. We've been here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to be here. And while I think the entire community is under attack, I think our community as a whole needs to be discussed. I really want to specifically say that trans voices and protecting trans people and their rights is very important right now. As somebody who has critical thinking skills and who has eyes and ears, but also somebody who is an indigenous person in this country, I know a genocide when I see one. I know what it looks like when it starts. It is happening. It is here. It's not starting. It's not a threat. It's happening and it's here. So do your due diligence and continue to keep up these conversations. There's a lot of stuff out there that wants to distract us from what's going on, but I think at the end of the day, I'm sorry, but it's not working. We see it. We're going to continue to talk about it. And you know what? If I'm a radical pro-trans person, whatever, so be it. If I can crucify me, I don't care. I'm not gonna lie, even saying that publicly scares me a little bit because of all the things going on, but at the same time, I'd rather say my part than never had said anything at all. So, but anyway, on that note, if you enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing. I do movie reviews here. I do things like this, recommendations, my video essays, but I'm also a small queer independent filmmaker myself. So if you want to support, I would much appreciate it. I do have my performance art films available on my channel, as well as my original short Glimmer, which is queer, so feel free to check those out if you would like to. I would appreciate it. But as for now, that's all I have. So I will see you in the next one.